Lanford has died. It seems almost impossible. He was so vital and so ever present in the lives of people who met him. Even if you didn't see him for a long time, his idiom was so unique and so sharp that often in your life you'd see things and you'd think, what would Lanford say about that? Or you'd actually hear him saying something about it. Lanford's idiom sprang from his very rich knowledge of and affection for writing, especially American writing. Lanford used to say that he wrote every play he loved. He'd see a play and be struck by it and absorb all of its technique and let it all moil around in that literary machine he had for a brain, and then he would write it, not recognizably. Uh, Once in a while people would say, that's a lot like Pinter, or that's a lot like Tennessee Williams, or that's a lot like William Inge. And Lanford was just shrugged. It was all transformed through his unique eye. That eye was natural, but very trained. When Lanford was living with me, he'd come in and pull from his pockets and from in between pages of books notes he had scribbled on pieces of paper or matchbooks or ticket stubs and shove them around on a table, quickly putting them together to make speeches or scenes for some vague overriding vision in his head that needed to be filled in with these bits of specific dialogue. He called it knitting, and he would sit up all night doing it. When we lived together, I was working and he was not, so he would write all day, and then I would come home and write all night at the same table. I wrote directly onto pages, straightforwardly. Lanford kept a shoebox full of these scraps on the table, and when I would move away, he would come and spread his out and start. And we were writing, for instance, The Madness of Lady Bright and The Haunted Host at the same time. And Lady Bright was a flutter of scraps of paper. The Haunted Host was line by line in a spiral notebook. It was a wonderful time. Lanford was incredibly generous on the one hand. When he began to be respected very early for his Chino plays, a bookstore owner offered to buy all of Lanford's manuscripts for cash. He saw right away that Lanford was a genius. And Lanford tried to talk the man into buying mine and Sam Shepard's as well. The man was not interested in me or Sam, only in Lanford. I guess he knew. When I invented, as Lanford put it, the mini play with my lights, camera, action, the mini play seeped into the language, and a theater in L.A. produced a whole evening of mini plays called Collision Course. When they moved it to New York, Lanford and Sam insisted that a play of mine be in it. Lanford just stamped his feet and said, you will put a play of Bob Patrick's in this evening. He invented it. When I first brought my first play into the Chino, Joe Chino refused it because he thought it would make me a terrible person to be a playwright. And Lanford actually told Joe, if you don't do Bob's play, I won't do any more plays here. He was generous like that. Once when I was taking garbage out at the Chino and I was dirty and scummy and awful, a reporter from a French magazine came asking for Robert Patrick, saying they must take a photograph of Robert Patrick. And I just couldn't admit who I was. And Lanford came kicking down the street, all neat and clean, and I whispered to him, "You're me, I'll explain later." So he let them take his photograph and interview him as me, when he could have snatched the publicity for himself very easily. He was loved that way. He was also not without ambition. But Lanford, from the moment he appeared on the scene at the Chino, was so attractive because of his talent and also because of his looks and charming personality that he attracted people around him from the start who often did a lot of what is called dirty work for him. So Lanford never had to overtly crush people to get ahead. Other people did that for him. I don't know that he knew that they did that. Uh, once, when Lanford was a judge for the Village Voice Obies, he fought like crazy to get them to come down and see my play Judas, which was his favorite play of mine. And none of them would come. And I saw him on the phone cursing them out, screaming at them, risking alienating them all on behalf of my play. None of them came, but it meant everything to me to have Lanford be on my side. I don't know what else to tell about him that's fit for public consumption. Lanford was a guy, and his romances when we were living together and mine often collided, and there are many funny stories that could be told about that. Um, Lanford fell very much in love with William M. Hoffman, who reciprocated. I think everybody was in love with Lanford at least once, except me. Lanford and I always said we were like the same sex. We couldn't be attracted to each other. Um, but Lanford and Billy were a famous couple. Lanford inspired Billy to start writing plays. And we all know that Billy became very famous. Um, uh, a man named Roy London pursued Lanford by not pursuing him. Uh, when we were doing a benefit called Bang that Roy was in and Lanford had a sketch in, I would look around backstage and there would be Lanford pinning Roy London to the wall with both hands. And then later that evening, Lanford would say, "Bob, I don't know why you have that Roy London in that play. He's so snotty." It was obvious Lanford was completely smitten and didn't know where to turn. And eventually, Roy let Lanford capture him, and they became a bit of a legendary couple. After Lanford got really rich and famous, he drifted out of my life, except for occasional midnight phone calls or sudden letters. He'd call me or email me, and it was as if we had seen each other the day before. And like for a week, I'd get emails or phone calls, and then he'd drop out of my life again. I know the last couple of times I saw Lanford are very characteristic. Um, I was on my way with some friends to see a play on Broadway called um, A Walk in the Woods, some sort of political play. And we passed a crowd waiting to go into Stephen Sondheim's In the Woods, Into the Woods. And I saw Lanford. I said, "Hi, Lance." He said, "Hi, Bob." He's drunk as a skunk. "Hi, Bob. What are you doing? Where are you going?" I said, "We're going to go see A Walk in the Woods." He said, "Oh, it's right here. Come on in. It's just about to start. Come on in." I said, "No, it's over there." He said, "No, no, come in." And was physically trying to drag me into the theater. And I forget who was with him. I think it was Marshall Mason, uh, who was, of course, the pillar that held Lance erect all his life. And Marshall delicately peeled Lanford's fingers off from me and dragged Lanford in, still swearing I was going to the wrong play. And then a couple of years ago, I went to New York to be in a TV show about the Chino as the birthplace of gay theater. And Lanford was there too, and it was a joy to see him. Uh, it was so wonderful. We just talked and talked, and they made videos of us talking. And I, I guess my last exchange with him is worth ending this disorderly memoir with. Um, I mentioned to Lance about the time he had pretended to be me for a magazine, and I said I had recently found the magazine, and that there was his picture, and uncharacteristically tense and mean. He said, "Well, Bob, it's your own fault. If I got the publicity and you didn't, it's your own fault." I said, "Well, no. I was going to tell you there's this an added irony. They didn't even mention anybody's name in the article, so neither you nor I got the publicity." And he relaxed. And I thought he must have been among very competitive people for the last 30 years to think that I, the least competitive human being who ever lost every opportunity in the world because of it, uh, was one of them. And I was just, and he relaxed, and to placate him, I said, "I loved all of you so much. I'm sorry any of us got successful because all I ever wanted was for us to be together. In fact, I never understood why we were together, in that I never understood what I possibly had to allow me to be with all you beautiful people." And Lanford said, with perfect Lanford Wilsonian rhythms, You had a job, Bob. I'm sure he's amusing the angels in heaven right now. This is too long and too incoherent, but I had to say something. Bless you, Lanford. I always smile when I see Lady Bright and hear the line of mine that you put in it. And I always smile when I see my play, No Trojan Women, and hear the line of yours that you gave me for it. Perhaps those two lines will meet again in some afterlife. It was sure swell knowing you in this one.